because I was just gonna say, like, I think to maintain peak though, most of these people it seems like you'd still have to like to be like the top. You still need very high doses. Whereas with training, it doesn't seem to be that that's the case. I mean, Brian, I don't know where you're at muscle wise now compared to like maybe your absolute peak or if you're right around there, but it certainly seems that people can maintain, let's say within 90, 95% to 100% of their peak with dramatically lower volume, which I kind of think like thank God for that because if you think about like maybe what could be necessary to hit your true peak, that can be quite a lot. But I also do wonder if maybe to some degree the industry has gone too much to that to act as if like to maintain 100% you can cut back to like there's the one study where they maintained with one third the volume. Like I don't think of somebody who's like as peaked as let's say like a Steve Hall, 15 years natural bodybuilding, like high volume doing all that, how much would he really, or Eric Helms, how much would they maintain if they cut volume to even 65%? Like I would guess that they'd lose a decent amount, but I don't know. But just this idea that as we get older, does it make sense to just get to like what Aaron or what Bryan is doing right now, which I don't know your total weekly volume, Bryan, but my understanding is you're basically doing like one exercise per body part that you're working that day. You're
Mhm.
pushing it hard for a couple of sets, and that's it. So but maybe go into your current routine, and that can help kind of elaborate that.
Yeah, it's been great. I switched over to a more abbreviated training style right around the springtime when bike season started because I had learned my lesson the prior year of trying to do, typical hypertrophy bodybuilding style evidence-based training and also trying to bike, and it just didn't work. So this year, back in March, I switched to a 2 times a week full body. And this was even lower volume than I'm doing now because it was basically one push movement, one pull movement, and then a hip leg movement. So it could be like RDL, pull up, and chest press. And then I might throw in, some lateral delts at the end or something like that. And I would do that twice a week. And that was all I did all the way up until August.
How many
And
sets per exercise?
2 to 3.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say like, hamstrings would get 2 to 3 sets a week, quads would get 2 to 3 sets a week. The pushing structure would get 4 to 6 sets a week, and the pulling structure would get 4 to 6 sets a week. But saying pulling structure and pushing structure doesn't really specify a muscle group per se. Currently, so once bike season ended in like late September, early October, I slightly increased volume and frequency by going to upper, lower, upper on the first week and then lower, upper, lower on the next week. So basically, it's like a 2 week cycle.
Hmm.
And now, what that volume has been 9 sets across 2 weeks per muscle group. So an average of 4.5 sets a week per muscle group, pretty much ubiquitously across all muscle groups for the most part. Um,
More or less to failure or
yeah,
anything
pretty
else?
much everything to failure or within one RIR. The approach I've been using was I started the cycle at 3 by 5, but using an 8 RM. So,
Okay.
the first set would be like a 3 RIR, and then the last set would be like a 1 to 2 RIR. And then every week I just add weight no matter what and just keep doing 3 by 5 until I reach a point where I can no longer hit the 3 by 5. And that was
Oh, but
great.
you're
Like,
always trying to do three. So for reference, you're always trying to do 3 by 5. So your first one is always going to be pretty sub max.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But I got to a point within, 4 weeks by through loading week to week where I was hitting 5 reps at 1 RIR on the first set and then maybe not even getting 5 on the final set. So maybe the final
Okay.
set's like 4 and it's
Okay.
failure. So it increased pretty quickly. Um, but as far as like overall results associated with that approach, I am legitimately the strongest I've ever been on a number of movements right now. Like I actually maxed out my cable chest press, which I've never been able to do, to a point where I can't even get myself in position anymore. I was telling you
Hmm.
enable
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So I literally like almost threw my shoulder out trying to like clean the cables into position so that I
Mm.
could do a chest press. And that's when I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to buy a chest press machine. So I maxed out my cables, bought a new machine. Uh, my hack squat, which I've been doing in the exact same way with the exact same machine for over 2 years now, every week, no questions asked. I am the strongest I've ever been on that. Like my PR last year was 560 for 6, and I just hit 580 for 4 by 5. and then I hit 630 for 4. So I mean, like 580 for those with a bunch of RIRs in there. Like for sure the strongest I've ever been on the hack machine. The chest press I noted. Um, my pull downs are as large as they've ever been. My leg curls same way. So my strength level at least is as good or better than it's ever been. Argument there could be that I'm creating less fatigue through doing lower volumes, and maybe therefore my approach is more of like a powerlifting approach. I'm using
Sure.
lower reps, more neural, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, as far as muscle mass and stuff like that, I was talking with Kim when we were in Mexico, walking on the beach a few days ago, talking about how our bodies have changed over the years and all that sort of stuff. And she said that in her mind, like she thinks I'm more jacked now than I even was during the CrossFit days. And my weight was the same. She was like, you had more love handles and more low back fat in the CrossFit days at 195 or 200. And than I do now at 195 or 200. And my legs are significantly bigger because I never really prioritized training legs until the last few years, honestly. Like I did them because they were something I had to do, but never
Yeah.
something that I really like put a lot of focus and energy into. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm at my like all-time best right now. It's hard to say for sure though, without dieting down and doing pictures or doing
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
sort of similar assessment. But overall, like I can't imagine ever going back to a higher volume bodybuilding style training anymore. Like I just love training in the 5 to 8 rep range, and I love only having to hit one movement per muscle group per day. Like I think I'm getting so much more out of each thing that way than I ever was doing 2, 3, or 4 exercises per muscle group.
That's awesome, man. So when you cut, so like you were doing higher volume and then you cut to like the super low volume, like the two full bodies,
Yeah.
would you say that you noticed any decrease in size or strength during that period or not even then? Because you were also doing a ton of cardio.
Yeah, no, I didn't honestly. Tough to say on size, um, because you just don't know after 25 plus years of training. But no, my strength never decreased. That was another difference is last year when I was trying to do the bodybuilding style training, I started noticing decreases in strength around August, a few months in. And this year I never experienced that. I
Mm.
was able to maintain or increase strength the entire time, despite all the biking and cardio. I mean, I was super scared going into it. Like I literally was cutting down from in the off season before March. I was doing a 5 times a week evidence-based hypertrophy program. It was what I called the intelligent bro split, where I had like one
Hmm.
main day where I had 8 to 10 sets for a muscle group, and then I had a touch-up day where it would be like, 1 to 3 sets for that same muscle group. So I was doing like all of the things, and then to without even gradually changing it, I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
it's bike season. We're going to 2 times a week full body going forward. I was super scared. I had no idea what was going to happen. I hadn't done this type of training since my first 3 years when I started with this abbreviated training style. And I think the thing that gave me reassurance was I had found myself back into an abbreviated training group, Facebook group on.
Mm.
And that's kind of where I got my start initially, in the 90s was in a group of abbreviated trainees. And I started kind of like looking through old messages, stalking down some of the people that train this way. And there's a number of guys that are like legitimate professional bodybuilders, natural bodybuilders that have been training 2 times a week full body or upper lower upper lower upper lower type things, like no more than 3 times a week. And these guys have as much natural muscle as you could accumulate, and they're stepping on stage and they're pro natural bodybuilders. And
Maybe Jeff
seeing that,
Alberts is pretty low.
Jeff Alberts is a great one. There's a guy out of Europe, or I mean, out of England, whose name I'm blanking on, but he's even in this forum.
Mm.
And he's a professional bodybuilder that has been on podcasts with like Helms and stuff like that before. And he's known for having these like super low abbreviated volume, abbreviated style programs. And I'll try to think of his name, but seeing these guys that they were having this success and talking to them about like, what has your training journey been and reading their stories. And they're just like, yeah, like I started training this way and I never changed. Like I've been two to
Mm.
three times a week, low volume forever. And um, it was just reassuring. Like I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if you train really hard and you're progressing, what's there to say that me progressing by doing sets of 5 is somehow meaning that I'm not gaining muscle because I'm not doing sets of 10 and doing more volume?